Your biometric ID doesn't match. The words hung in the inspection bay like a snapped wire. Sharp, sudden, irrevocable. Korven Draal didn't flinch. He blinked once, just once, then set his datapad down on the check-in slab, fingers still coated with the resin dust from his shuttle's manual docking latch. The Vexari officer didn't blink at all, rigid, triangular pupils locked on Corven's profile display as if the numbers might realign through will alone. "I'm authorized," Corven said. His voice was low, measured, not calm, measured, like a man reciting a safety checklist while the walls bled fire. The officer's long fingers tapped the laser plasma interface, pulling up auxiliary logs. "You boarded with D2 classification. But this record shows atmospheric exposure delta inconsistent with your claimed station." The projection flickered. "You're not from Prin Theta. I was transferred 6 months ago. Tower logs weren't updated." The officer didn't look at him, just raised a webbed hand and gestured to a second figure, taller, wrapped in black subdermal mesh, the kind of uniform that didn't display rank or names. Corven glanced toward his shuttle, still latched, still quiet. Then the lights changed. Not a siren, not an alarm, just a shift blue to amber, and just like that, Korven Draal became an event. The secondary officer moved first, not with speed, but with certainty. His gloves brushed down Corven's sleeves, not searching, but assessing, surface pressures, fabric tension. Then, with a single downward swipe over Corven's chest plate, the embedded core registered. The entire bay dimmed a fraction as the scan pulled deeper. No words, no noise, just the steady clicking of invasive readout beams on the walls and the faint shifting of heat from Corven's collar to his ribs. "Step back," the black mesh officer said. "Not a threat, a protocol." Corven stepped. One pace, another. His boots touched the edge of the yellow boundary and held. The scan halted, and then the officer stepped forward with a new device, smaller than a credit disk. He pressed it against the inner left edge of Corven's armored vest. It glowed. Not green, not red, white. That glow, sterile and cold, lingered too long. The officer didn't speak. He simply turned and keyed into his wrist cuff. A panel behind Corven hissed open. He didn't resist. 2 Vexari guards emerged, neither armed, but both clearly ready. Their breath masks twitched with the anticipation of containment protocol. Corven raised his hands. "I'm not resisting." The officer nodded toward the corridor. "Detainment requested under Article 14. Suspicion of resonant core possession." Corven moved. The hallway was narrow, curved, built not for aesthetics but compliance. The walls emitted a subtle warmth, not enough to sweat, but enough to disorient. No corners, no shadows, just control. Each step was heavier than the last, not from the gravity, but the realization pressing against his ribcage like a hydraulic clamp. By the time they reached the holding chamber, Corven's mouth had dried, not parched, hollowed. They took his boots, his belt, his wristband, left him in the undersuit. The chair in the room wasn't bolted, but it might as well have been. Single fixture, clean frame, built from the kind of alloy that whispered permanence. A lens in the upper corner of the ceiling blinked every 3 seconds. Exactly 3. He sat, slowly. On the far wall a heads-up display blinked to life. Corven's face filled the screen. Below it, lines of data rolled past: vitals, clearance history, movement logs, sleep patterns, immune response logs, then anomalies, secondary heartbeat irregularities, core latency spike registered on entry, planet of origin mismatch detected, dental interference, unknown material, molar 2A. He looked at none of it. Instead his eyes drifted to the camera again. That upper corner lens, always blinking, like a metronome for dread. Hours passed, or minutes, or both. The next voice came not from the door but from the walls. "Korven Draal, do you consent to neural integrity scan under Article 14, subsection 6? "I don't consent." Silence. "Consent not required under protocol override." Commencing scan. The chair locked. Subtle, not brutal. A restraint at the wrists, a pad at the back of the neck, a hiss near his temples, cold. Then the pressure began. It wasn't pain, at first, just inversion. Memories flowed upward, like water boiling in reverse. He saw his childhood deck, Europa Substation 9, the lights, the wrench handle in his father's hand. He tried to hold on to that, but the pressure spiked. Another flicker. This time his deployment orders, sealed slate, the red triangle in the corner, not to be opened. He hadn't opened it, never questioned it. His nose began to bleed. A single drop, then another. The camera caught it, blinked. They turned off the screen, but the scan didn't stop. Flashes now, noise, bright figures with indistinct faces, instructions blurred by light distortion. Corven bit his cheek, hard. The blood hit the base of his tongue and surged into memory. Then, without warning, everything stopped. The room dimmed. The restraints clicked open. Corven slumped forward, not unconscious, not awake. The door opened. A different officer entered this time, younger, sharper. His armor bore no insignia, just a simple vertical mark over the heart. He sat across from Corven, didn't speak for a long time. Then calmly, he asked, "Do you know what that thing in your chest plate is?" Corven exhaled slowly. "I didn't know it was real. Yet it triggered a core response the moment you stepped into the bay." Corven swallowed. "It hurt. I was told it was a dummy, for testing, firmware shell, and the molar." Corven blinked, then looked down. "What molar?" The officer leaned forward, placed a small capsule on the table. Inside, a tiny oscillator spun in silence, non-functional, but unmistakable. Corven stared. "You've been caught, technician," the officer said. "But something's wrong." Corven looked up. "I'm just a man who followed orders." The officer nodded. "Too perfectly." He stood. Corven's vision blurred at the edges. The lens blinked again. 3 seconds, always 3. He didn't scream. He didn't weep. He watched. Because deep down, he didn't understand what was coming either. "He's watching the lens again." The voice came through the observation relay with no urgency. Just data. Flat, like a weather report, noting a distant atmospheric shift. Analyst Karen Soth didn't look up from his console. He tapped twice, isolating the visual feed, then slowed the playback. Korven Draal, designation flagged under D2, former systems technician, sat limp in the containment chair. One eye nearly swollen shut, lip cracked from earlier cranial pulse compression. His gaze, however, hadn't changed. Every 12 seconds, exactly on the blink of the monitoring sensor, he tilted his chin by 1 degree and stared. Soth narrowed his eyes. Behind the tinted observation pane, the lead interrogator entered, a tall Vexari with a skin sleeve etched in tribunal gray. He carried no visible instruments, only a palm slate and a narrow vial filled with dull orange liquid. The interrogation suite lights dimmed slightly as he approached Corven and set the vial on the table between them. Corven didn't move. "Your core artifact," the interrogator said, "is unregistered across all Vexari, Terran, and Concordance databases. It uses no known harmonics. It's unresponsive." Corven exhaled slowly, as if bracing for more than words. "That," the interrogator said, pointing with his wrist slate, "is not civilian scrap." Corven replied without raising his head. "I didn't build it. You carried it. I was told it was inert." The interrogator tapped the slate again. "Every signal core, even dormant, pulses once per cycle. Yours didn't. Yet you passed through 3 gateway buoys without tripping any scans. That's not an oversight. That's calibration." Corven closed his eyes. The silence was neither defiance nor surrender. It was wait. Observation log. Entry #47, Ax 3. Subject's biosync remains flat. Neurological patterns show resistance training. Eye dilation not aligned with pain response spikes. Analyst Soth rechecked the timing on the eye movements. Too consistent, no randomness. The blinking wasn't involuntary, it was patterned. But patterned toward what? Meanwhile, the interrogator uncapped the vial. A thin vapor rose, not with scent, but with temperature. The air cooled instantly. Corven's shoulders tensed. "This," the interrogator said, voice smooth as wet glass, "is used during deep neural scraping. We apply it under the tongue. It strips inhibitory reflexes and severs mnemonic control." Corven didn't resist. The liquid hissed as it met flesh. Corven's jaw locked, breath caught halfway between exhale and scream, but neither emerged. Instead, his spine arched, fingers spasmed, and he snapped against the chair like a current passed through him. Observation log. Entry #48, Ax 3. Seizure onset confirmed. Molar 2A device registers kinetic shift. Secondary waveform emitted from upper shrine node uplink. Soth's fingers stopped mid-log. He highlighted the burst. What shrine node? No one mentioned shrine nodes in a military-grade uplink facility. That kind of tech was legacy, left in place for ceremonial broadcasting cycles and cultural preservation. They weren't even wired to the primary command grid anymore. And yet, the waveform, low frequency, subharmonic, buried beneath the seizure tremors, not noise, structured. Inside the chamber, Corvin's body had collapsed again, this time to stillness. The interrogator stepped back. He should have blacked out, he muttered to no one. Instead, he's stabilizing. Corvin's eyes opened, and again turned to the lens. Observation log, entry #49x3, eye tracking returned to lens focus. No corresponding reflex markers. Thermal readings suggest conscious fixation. Soth stood. Something wasn't lining up. He pinged the embedded analytics team 2 decks below, requested a relic scan on the molar oscillator flagged earlier. Within minutes, a reply beamed to his secondary interface. Object relay type micro-oscillator, model class, archaic Terran, type D, functionality, discontinued, status, inert, but never decommissioned. Note historically used to initiate sync in beacon relay activations. Soth frowned. You never disable old Terran devices, he muttered. You just forget they still work. He queued a private message to Oversight. Zelanthian Overseer Thram Valen reviewed the flagged log without ceremony. His quarters, 3 layers deeper into the administrative node, were filled with relics he never spoke of. A broken concordance insignia on the wall, an old sector map, with Vexari borders drawn in dry ink. He read Corvin's file twice, then looked at the attached footage, frozen on the frame where Corvin's seizure forced a bite down on Molar 2A. He didn't send a reply. Instead, he opened a private archive on his secure slate. Unfiled report, Draal, Corven, timeline anomaly in biosync rhythm, seizure aligned with pattern triggers, molar relay consistent with legacy Terran code seeds, probability of controlled upload, 41% status, unsubmitted, archive only. He closed it, locked the slate, said nothing. Back in the chamber, Corvin's breath had gone shallow again. His restraints, loosened after the spasms, creaked as his hands twitched. The interrogator returned with a tribunal slate, blank, except for a single red stamp across the top, review suspended. He laid it on the table and stared at Corven. I've broken stronger men, he said quietly. But they scream, they beg, they sweat. You just watch. Corven turned his head. That scare you? No, the interrogator said. It annoys me. He reached for the scanner again. Corven didn't resist, not because he was brave, because he was unraveling. Each pulse, each scrape, each jolt tore more than tissue. It untied the last knots of certainty in him. He remembered being told, follow the sequence, deliver the packet, do not deviate. But no one said anything about cameras, or shrine nodes, or molar oscillators. The room darkened again. The lens blinked, and Corven blinked back. He didn't understand the pattern, but something inside him had already begun to unfold. Don't swallow. Let it burn. The Vexari interrogator's voice drifted from behind the mask, hands steady as he tilted the next vial beneath Corven's tongue. A second dose, more concentrated, thicker. This one carried weight in its consistency, pooling beneath the tongue like molten resin. Corven tried to keep still. His jaw betrayed him. Something fractured deep inside his skull, sharp as glass snapping beneath pressure. He choked. The restraints didn't stop his body from convulsing. Tendons screamed across his limbs as involuntary spasms overtook him, jerking him hard enough to shift the chair a full inch across the deck. One eye rolled upward, the other locked on nothing. Blood leaked from the corner of his mouth, ribboning along the ridge of his chin, trailing down his neck like ink bleeding through paper. Then the bite came. Not intentional. Reflexive. The left molar cracked with a crunch like gravel underfoot. Pain exploded behind his eyes, sending neural cascades down the base of his spine. His head snapped forward as if pulled by a cable. A single tremor shot through his chest. He screamed, not from the pain itself, but from the realization that something else had activated. Within the crushed cap, something old stirred to life. A wave, not electromagnetic, not chemical, rippled out from the broken tooth in a single burst. It moved sideways through the room, bypassing the scanner arrays, bypassing the suppression field. It sought only one path, one old, half-forgotten route. Above the chamber, embedded into the architectural latticework of the facility's ceremonial tower, a remnant from an older alliance, sat a dormant shrine uplink node, sealed decades ago, still tethered. The microburst found it. Like an old key dropped into a half-buried lock, it fit. The node blinked once, then twice, a silent light, a forgotten ritual. Inside the core, archived under obsolete treaty class encoding, a hidden function received the packet. Encoded, bracketed by Terran checksum logic, a ghost signal wrapped in ceremonial syntax. No one in the tower noticed, at least, not immediately. Corven collapsed, lungs spasming, eyes unfocused, his limbs hung like disconnected wire. Blood dotted the interrogation chair, small stains, sharp-edged, twitching with his breath. The Vexari officer cursed and hit the restraint override. The scanner arms withdrew with a stutter. Corven slid from the seat and hit the floor with a sound that didn't echo. Medic unit, the officer barked. He's coding out. Behind the chamber, a sensor relay recorded the event, but the signal wasn't flagged. Not yet. On Europa Station, 3 sectors away and orbiting a dead moon called Perrin 12, an inbound signal blinked to life in the lower deck relay bay. No alarm, no flare, just a muted tone. Technician Branner Dell was halfway through a maintenance check on the oxygen filtration lines when the console behind him chirped. He turned lazily, scanned the screen. One line, signal origin, Shrine Node 009VX vertical bar protocol, legacy ping, Draal. He frowned. There weren't supposed to be active shrine nodes anymore. He tapped a few commands, cross-referenced the checksum, and froze. The checksum carried a timestamp. Old, at least 17 cycles. Yet embedded in the packet was a directive tag, encrypted under Earth's oblique command protocols. Only one department used those. He didn't call anyone. He didn't move. Instead, he loaded the internal comms system and sent one silent message to the upper floor. It contained no body, just one attachment. Checksum verified. Sender class, Korven Draal, condition fulfilled. Trigger received directive flag. Initiate vault recall. B.W. Branner stared at the words, then turned off the lights in the bay. Back in the chamber, Corven gasped as breath returned. Wet, rattling, not whole. A medical drone entered, scanned him. No vitals detected for 7 seconds. Then a heartbeat resumed. Staggered, uneven, weak. The interrogator watched the vitals recalibrate on the laser plasma display. "Why did your heart stop?" he muttered. Corven blinked slowly, his pupils sluggish in the overhead light. "I bit wrong," he whispered. "What did you trigger?" The interrogator demanded, voice now taut. "I was told it was a firmware packet," Corven mumbled. "Diagnostic shell, nothing else." "You lie." "I believed it." His hands shook as he lifted them. The drone injected stabilizer into his neck. He exhaled, shoulders finally stilling. From the corner, the camera blinked again. 3 seconds, then again. The interrogator didn't see it. He was focused on Corven's teeth, searching for the shattered cap. "You activated something. What was it?" he snapped. Corven looked at the camera, not the officer, not the scanner. "The camera wasn't for you," he whispered. His eyes rolled back, and this time, he didn't wake. The chair beeped once. Flat line, not chaos, not fury, just termination. The drone stepped back, the chamber lights dimmed to standby. Behind the walls, the signal had already passed, through the shrine, through the relay, through Europa, and into the hands of someone who had been waiting for decades. Corven's body stayed still, but the signal lived. Signal verified. Source Korven Draal. Condition tag fulfilled. The message appeared in silence on the lower edge of the heads-up display. No sound accompanied it, just a flicker of light in a room where silence had weight. Director Jern Veslik did not turn to the aide who delivered the update. He read the line once, then allowed the display to dim on its own. His breath remained steady. Behind him, the walls of Earth's oblique warfare command chamber reflected no light. Each surface was designed to absorb glow, to silence reflections. No decoration, no banners, only function. "Show me the checksum," Veslik said. A second aide, younger, thinner, tapped once on his console. The laser plasma wall blinked, rendering a sequence of Terran code from an era before consolidation treaties. In its center, buried under syntax and fragment loops, was a date, not current, not recent, 17 years dormant. Veslik read the date. His eyes didn't move across the code. They landed only where they needed. His finger traced the signal header, the shard of the uplink stamp, the registry class, Europa, shrine node. A dead relay, lit for the first time in 2 decades, had blinked once across the outer network. No fanfare, no elevation warnings. Just a line of light sliding into the right port, the packet tagged with one embedded phrase, "Directive, awaiting vault recall." The director rose. Behind the chamber's main table sat 5 other command officers. None spoke. They weren't meant to. They were observers, men whose voices had been used in prior conflicts, then shelved when the nature of war changed. Veslik moved to the command DAS. He opened a locked compartment set into the center of the floor. Inside, a single slate rested in isolation, its surface lined with black sealant paint that flaked if exposed to open air. He didn't lift it. He scanned it, then placed his palm on the recessed panel beside it. Authorization, Veslik, Jern, Tier 1. A red ring circled the slate, then it clicked once and revealed a 4-character directive, BW. No one asked what it stood for. They already knew. "Time marker," he asked, without turning. 36 minutes since burst. Europa confirmed. Kalmar dead channel just lit. Nexus hasn't responded yet. Delay it. Vault recall doesn't need Nexus. Understood. He tapped the top of the directive slate. Across the floor, a light began blinking. Slow, red. Beneath it, in a display embedded in the floor's architecture, a schematic appeared. Not a fleet, not a formation, just a vessel. No crew manifest. No firepower registry. No trajectory paths. Just a name. LVX-99. Veslik walked toward the display, watching as its activation logs began filling in, one line at a time. Cryo-seals disengaged, payload vector set. Protocol anchor uploaded, treaty link override. Enabled launch window. Veslik asked. 6 minutes to align. It's already warming the spinal mesh. Then send the order. Confirmation routing. He looked back, just once, toward the other 5 men seated in the dark. No reply. None needed. Send it, Veslik repeated. In a vault hidden beneath the outer ridge of Selvaris crater, LVX-99 stirred. There was no hum, no ignition. The vessel simply activated, its interior lit by old Earth sublattice glow, not modern power grids. No panels flickered, no engines fired. Instead, the ship aligned itself. In the launch chamber, a heads-up display counted silently. Underneath the display, 3 command tags appeared, stacked neatly. Oregon, Draal condition, true protocol, BW, breach upon witness. The ship launched without noise, without resistance. Its exterior bore no identification. Its surface absorbed signal. Its systems had no ping, no beacon, no reactive shield, because it didn't need protection. It was not a weapon. It was an instruction set. Back inside Oblique Command, Veslik stood before the now deactivated slate. The aide next to him hesitated. "Director, was it time?" Veslik didn't answer. He glanced toward the shadows where the observers sat. One of them leaned forward, voice low, careful. "We buried BW for a reason." Veslik nodded, and they exhumed it with a broadcast. A third officer shifted in his seat. "They tortured a technician." "No," Veslik replied. "They activated a protocol." He turned back to the aide. "Send final signal to the Kalmar relay." "Encryption?" "None." The aide paused. "That'll be flagged. It's unsecured. That's the point. We want it read." He crossed the floor and faced the recessed uplink terminal. One final entry line waited for confirmation. He keyed in a message with only one line. "Vault recall confirmed. Breach initiated. Response irreversible." The screen flicked off. He closed the uplink, then locked the panel. Behind him, the chamber's lights shut down row by row. No discussion followed. No explanation was logged. LVX-99 was already en route. Unscheduled docking detected. The Vexari comms officer stared at the inbound alert on his heads-up display. His spines shifted subtly along the back of his neck. Instinct, not protocol. He tapped a query command. No IFF tag, no biosignals, no power emission, just mass. The object was already inside the relay perimeter. He didn't speak again. He just turned to his superior, who approached with the fluidity of command born from decades of silence rather than noise. Source, ghost signature, shows as compliant, overrides routing permissions. Slot D7 accepted the handshake. Accepted it, the officer nodded, without challenge. The commander's jaw clenched, an almost imperceptible motion, but the implications rippled across his posture. Redirect system integrity scan to slot D. The tech complied. The readout populated. The vessel, if it could even be called that, hadn't powered up thrusters or deployed landing gear. It had simply docked. A seamless connection through an antique gateway protocol, written in an era where Earth helped optimize. Vexari Commercial Trade Logistics. On the main wall, the command display flared with a rotating interface wheel, slowly at first, then faster. What's that process? Unsure. No visual markers, no system alerts. The wheel slowed, then paused. From the edge of the beacon node, a string of lights blinked, once forward, then in reverse, Morse, but backward. Shut it down, the commander ordered. No access. It's not ours anymore. In the deeper strata of the military grid, subsystems began to whisper in loops. Not alarms, feedback. Governance AI Instance 12 flickered. Instance 13 restarted. Instance 9 issued a contradiction report, then revoked it, then issued it again. Targeting subsystems failed to lock onto drift objects. Instead, their crosshairs dragged sideways, recalibrated, then aimed at system calibration beacons. A warship above Cressel's arc aimed its primary cannon downward, not fire-ready, just angled. No order had been given. FleetNet tried to override. FleetNet vanished. On Vexari Prime, command staff began noticing delays. Doors paused before opening. Lift tubes dropped a meter too far before stopping. Weather modulation domes predicted a solar surge under a night sky. Aides fidgeted. Tacticians triple-checked static panels. Communications officers resorted to manual transmission scripts. In the governor's spire, the administrative overseer leaned close to the central interface slab. Her breath fogged the edge. The lights around her dimmed not all at once, but progressively, like watching dust crawl across a city one bulb at a time. Run memory check on AI core, she said. Core doesn't respond. Try the backup. Looped. The screen blinked once, then went blank. Seconds later, every display within the spire reset. Once, then twice. Then each began showing different parts of the same thing. Self-audits, lines of command relays that no one initiated. Rerouting commands issued with Earth-flagged origin trails. Back at dock point, D7, LVX-99 still hadn't moved. It didn't need to. What it carried was already spreading, quiet, recursive, invisible, until it was too late. Across the orbital grid, power readings entered saturation loops. Backup systems attempted autocorrections, but the instructions they pulled were filled with Earth-laced fail directives from long-archived firmware packets embedded in transport node memory. The structure of the Vexari network, the very spine of their digital infrastructure, had been built with assistance from Earth nearly 70 years ago. What they believed were partnership integrations had always been dependency chains. They updated around it, built over it, but never beneath it. LVX-99 had sent one command: revoke trust hierarchy. Every system obeyed, not because it was forced, but because the Vexari had never rewritten the core. In the military quadrant, a fleet officer shouted from his dais, "We're receiving fire link signals from vessels already docked. Disable them." "I can't." The system's reauthorizing targeting maps. They're using dummy designations. A laser plasma screen on the far wall turned white, then black, then slowly unfurled an Earth seal, ancient, not recent. A Terran mark last used during the Concordance Accords. The display didn't move. It just pulsed, quietly, consistently. Another officer stood. "Our tactical arrays are locked." Who locked them? No one, or more accurately, no one now. Below the city, beneath the operations tower's base, emergency redundancy circuits began to warm up, a fail-safe that required triple confirmation among the 9 ranking system authorities. The final key refused to engage. It had been reclassified. By whom? The system itself. All 9 officers still breathed, still acted, yet none had control. Their access codes had been rerouted into echo chains. Whatever override protocol they attempted simply looped back with a message: excess error authority, seed revoked, conditions satisfied, continuity braced. Then a final line: this node is no longer yours. The chamber went dark. Outside, the sky shimmered, not with war, but with glitching clouds. Atmospheric monitors showed temperatures from other planets. Weather shifted in seconds. Irrigation schedules reset to day 0. Dome lights cycled erratically. Citizens watched as the public communication pillars blinked with frames of static between every word. A message appeared. In Terran Common. It read, "Witness confirmed." Then the pillar displays all shut down together. The collapse had begun. No invasion, no threat, just a single ship, and code older than the Empire itself. They're still losing power. The words came from the mouth of a junior tactician standing at the edge of the Vexari Prime Command Nexus. His voice wasn't raised. He didn't need to shout. The gravity in the room had already changed. Above them, the orbital projection dimmed not from darkness, but from erasure. Entire sectors blinked off the command grid, as if peeled from memory. Every fleet group that once hovered like constellations around the outer defense spheres was now represented by flickering fragments, stuttering input lines, or empty markers marked node pending. The first strategos turned toward the central altar, the older core used only in ceremonial state broadcasts. It had activated on its own. No authorization code had been input. No signal request had been logged. Just activation. The laser plasma pedestal displayed a message in Terran dialect, rendered in ritual script not used since the Earth. Vexari Accords of Cycle 82. No key-triggered condition. Fulfilled trust chain void. The strategos stepped forward, purged the syntax, disable interlink feedback. The technician tried. The altar rejects external inputs. Then isolate it. We've already lost comms with the second ring. The heads-up displays lining the chamber walls began to pulse irregularly. Red, gold, then nothing. A single star above the capital dimmed, not because it died, but because the system observing it no longer recognized the telemetry path. What wasn't measurable became unreachable. Lights in the Nexus ceiling throbbed in low rhythm, pulsing with subroutines that no one had written. Earth's null keys weren't weapons. They were permissions, buried inside treaty logs, wrapped in economic firmware. They'd existed for decades as dead code until a civilian died on camera, and now every trust line seeded with Terran keyframes refused to trust anything Vexari-born. Not a coup, a revocation. In the orbital governance tower, 2 counselors argued in different tongues, one shouting in high Vexari, the other speaking through an old translator collar that warbled mid-sentence. Their argument was interrupted by the appearance of an uncommanded message across every visible screen. Memory protocol enacted authorship, Earth Treaty Division date of entry, sealed archive, not current. A single glyph followed, a Terran seal, slightly aged, not defiant, just official. The counselor wearing the translator looked at it and murmured, "They left this here. Who would embed sabotage in a treaty?" The older Vexari answered without irony, "Someone who never believed we'd keep our word." Emergency transmissions attempted to bridge the collapse. Military command centers opened every secure frequency. What came back wasn't silence. It was repetition. Every outbound signal was received, mirrored, and returned in recursive burst chains. Hundreds of fleet commands looped into each other. Fire directives reversed. Shield uplinks reclassified their own fleets as invisible. One general stared as his entire carrier battalion reflagged itself as deprecated. No weapons fired, but every ship lost its sight. They remained there fully functional, but disconnected. Each subsystem sent out requests. Each request arrived back as a cancellation. Fleet unity fractured not with violence, but with abandonment. The stars were still above, but the network beneath them was gone. On the eastern spire of the planetary archive vaults, a news relay attempted one final emergency broadcast. The reporter wore the traditional stone-hued robe of Vexari cultural continuity, and stood before a heads-up display showing the orbital grid. We have confirmed that primary governance lines are suffering progressive cascading faults. We advise all citizens to remain calm. The feed froze, not with static, but with absolute stillness. The woman's face remained paused mid-word. Behind her, the map had started to turn black. One district at a time. Broadcast markers showed zero output. Then the screen went white. No message replaced it, just the absence of continuation. Across the capital, in the Monument District, ceremonial lights had gone cold. Worship towers, long rebuilt over Earth-donated infrastructure, now flickered between control modes. Their subroutines were wrapped in ethical alignment algorithms, ones Terrans had helped install under the guise of shared moral evolution. Now those same algorithms interpreted the broadcasted torture of a Terran civilian as a breach of alignment clause. Article 6, violation of witness dignity. The result? Autonomous shutdown. Entire towers kneeled, mechanical joints lowered themselves to the earth as if grieving. Some shattered under their own collapsed joints. Not a single alarm sounded, just the silence of reverent obedience. The Empire's Emergency Council convened for a final closed-stream summit. Only 37 members joined before the link degraded. On the walls behind them, the grand chrono wheel began to turn, an old symbolic mechanism used to denote epoch shifts. It hadn't moved in 400 years. Now unaided, it rotated once, just once. As it settled, every console in the chamber went dim. One member leaned forward. What happened to the feed? Another touched the side of his mask. My uplink is dead. The oldest among them stood. They left the keys behind. No one argued. The stream cut off mid-breath. Frozen. That frame, 37 faces, most turned toward the speaker, others blinking mid-sentence, remained on laser displays for 13 seconds before vanishing. Above Vexari Prime, the stars flickered once, a visual echo, glitching slightly as if reality itself had shifted its alignment, not because of mass, but because the network interpreting the light no longer had permission to trust what it saw. And for the first time in memory, the galaxy looked smaller, not by distance, by removal. Play it again. No overlays. Raw feed only. The surviving Vexari command officers crowded around the auxiliary station beneath the capital citadel, one of the few nodes still running on insulated backup cores. No uplink. No outbound signal. Only archived data that hadn't yet bled into recursive loops. The junior technician's hands shook as he keyed the panel. The terminal stuttered once, then again, then loaded a video file marked Interrogation Room Log / subject DRAL Corven / cycle T1. Final seizure sequence. Corrupted segments flickered at the top, framed in static. No metadata, just a timestamp and a pulsing green triangle in the lower corner. The screen illuminated. Korven Draal's blood-slicked face filled the center. One side of his mouth drooped from trauma. His hands, bound at the wrist, twitched faintly. His gaze, fixed upward. The audio burst in late, half a second off. A delay. Enough to make his words stumble across themselves like echoes in a collapsing hall. I didn't know, Corven muttered in the footage. I wasn't supposed to. His breath rasped. Red spread beneath his collar. I was the gate. The room remained silent. The playback continued. I followed instructions. That's all. A pause. Then a whisper barely picked up by the terminal's audio dampeners. This was never about me. A senior officer stepped closer. His voice held no accusation, only weariness. That line, has anyone cross-referenced it? The technician nodded once. We parsed the phrase structure. It's embedded in the checksum header of the Europa Pulse, meaning the upload Corven triggered was pre-scripted with that exact phrase. His voice matched the checksum's embedded audio. He said what the code carried. The commander rubbed the bridge of his nose. So the message wasn't reactive. No, the technician confirmed. It was timed. Another officer leaned over the shoulder of the analyst and gestured at the display. Scrub to the final frame. The feed jumped. Corven's face slackened. His breath stopped. His body slumped forward. Then the feed glitched. Once. Twice. On the third blink, a single symbol emerged on the terminal's edge, tucked into the border frame, almost too faint to notice. An Earth glyph. Not a logo. Not military. A seal. Its curves were etched in treaty font, one used only in diplomatic logs, unused for years, but unmistakable. The technician zoomed in. Embedded beneath the glyph was a line of code looping endlessly. Conditions satisfied origin, Terran command. Shrouded directive initiation. Witness event // class B breach. Gateway closed. No one spoke. The temperature in the room hadn't changed, but the air felt slower. From the rear console, a junior comms officer let out a staggered breath. "Sir, there's something else." The central monitor pulsed once. Its protective firewall briefly dropped, overridden by a buried administrative string. An AI core, thought purged during the null cascade, reactivated. No greeting, no protocol, just a burst of archived logs scrolling upward at unreadable speeds. Then the AI spoke. Not a phrase, not a sentence, just a question delivered in a fractured voice-sliced monotone. "Do you remember who authored your base code?" The lights in the station dimmed. The AI shut itself off. A final message replaced the scroll. File DRAL Korven / status. Closed notes operative unaware. Role transmission vector only. Designation gateway / decoy result. Successful fulfillment of shrouded protocol BW. The technician leaned back. He never knew what he carried. The commanding officer looked at the corrupted footage again. Corven's slack face frozen mid-fall, head tilted toward the lens. Not pleading, not defiant, just resigned. The junior analyst whispered. "He wasn't a spy." "No," the commander said, stepping back. "He was a signal." The heads-up display flickered again. The Earth seal returned for 2 seconds, faded, incomplete, then vanished. The lights came back online, but softer than before. No one moved. Not because of fear, because they finally understood. Korven Draal didn't unlock Earth's revenge. He was the lock, and Earth wrote the key long before the cell door opened. "He's gone." The words reached Nexvaren's comm slab as a simple, unencrypted packet. No headers, no routing tags, no handshake verification. It blinked in the corner of his display, quiet as a heartbeat left too long on the table. He didn't respond. Not immediately. He leaned forward, elbows creaking against the armrests of the old Terran relay chair, its leather cracked, its base misaligned from decades of gravity drift on this forgotten rock. The asteroid field beyond his window moved with a slowness that mocked time. Kalmar Belt's starfield was half dead, stars occluded by dust and remnant scaffolds from 1,000 collapsed mines. Each speck hung like a ruin mid-breath. The message blinked again. Nex reached for the terminal. He didn't type. He simply opened the file. The contents appeared in single-line syntax, staggered code echoes, trailing checksum fragments, and a timestamp. Final condition met. Oregon node. DAC-REL Corven burst confirmed sickle. Complete stage 7 of 7 memory chain resolved. He blinked once. No alarm trailed him. No celebration marked the signal's arrival. The console didn't flash, didn't chirp. It understood. The old systems beneath his feet stirred gently. Not systems meant for war. These weren't designed to launch anything. This was Earth's original treaty backbone, preserved here because no one cared enough to dismantle it. That was the point. He reached beside him and removed the last scroll still mounted on the wall. Faded vellum, the Earth, Vexari alignment charter. The ink had long turned silver. The bottom seal, his own. Nexvaren hadn't signed it as a politician. He was never elected. He was appointed, drafted as Earth's final treaty architect. The man who had watched civilizations lie through smiles and codify betrayal in elegant font. He hadn't written retaliation into the treaty. He had written remembrance. He placed the scroll across his knees, then pulled open the console's command line. The relay station came online, not with light, but with movement. Floor panels shifted, a mechanical hum, no, a soft vibration deep in the bones, not noise, motion. Forgotten servos turned inward, seeking alignment points long disused. One screen lit in front of him, a laser plasma display etched in amber. Final condition time index verified directive chain complete. Response awaiting. His fingers hovered above the console, not from hesitation, but from ceremony. The channel remained open. The network once dormant, now waited for a final instruction. He leaned forward, typed 5 words, directive closed, seal all threads. The panel darkened. Then the stars blinked. Above the Kalmar belt, 3 beacons flared for the last time. Old treaty signal towers left to drift. Each one rotated once, cast a final pulse, and dimmed. The Earth seal burned across their dying displays, then faded into black. Every relay on the galactic alignment spectrum received the signal. None could reply. The protocol was final. Back in orbit around Vexari Prime, the last AI thread pinged one final log to an internal archive vault, then erased its own permissions. The message would not spread. It didn't need to. The symbol on screen lingered longer than it should have. Earth's insignia, woven into a broken glyph once etched into council stone, dissolved into static. No follow-up directive followed. No threat loomed behind it. Only finality. Nex remained seated. Outside his window, a cold wind brushed ancient satellite hulls, stirring nothing but light. His breath clouded faintly, not from fear, from atmosphere degradation no one had bothered to correct. He tapped the console one last time. Archive summary, project class, vault recall, initiation year, 1402T completion marker, directive BW result, status resolved total action, 1 transmission final line, human witness confirmed. He leaned back, stared upward through the cracked dome. The stars here were different, duller, fewer. He had chosen this belt because it never changed, because that's where you watch endings from, the kind no one speaks of, the ones built over lifetimes, waiting for a single moment when the world forgets why it ever feared Earth. He reached into his coat, withdrew the original activation key, an analog chip etched with the seal of old Terra. A single line ran through it, engraved by hand. If they forget Corven, make sure they remember what forgetting costs. He stood, walked toward the old observatory rail, and dropped the chip into the reclamation chute. No words, no monument, nothing left behind, because Earth had already spoken, and all that remained was silence. Galactic communiques slowed in the weeks after. Fleets stopped trusting their own encryption. Empires shifted policy in shadows, not summits. Minor colonies rewrote their governance protocols, citing cultural calibration drift. Council sessions now began with a new ritual, 1 minute of stillness, in memory of something never formally named. No formal declaration had ever been filed, yet everyone knew. They tortured a human civilian, and Earth answered with one silent ship. Now the galaxy would learn to listen harder, because next time, it wouldn't speak at all.